All right, so welcome back. So where are we at? So we're rocking this data store, right? So we've got a form. It's sending us data. We're storing it in the data store. We've got Jinja. It was making the form for us, but it's not actually pulling anything out of the data store and feeding it into Jinja. Really, the whole point of Jinja is that it can take data in and kind of like put it in kind of like a formatted print string, right? That's what it really does. If your only goal is to serve static HTML, there's different ways to do that, right? So let's start using like the power of Jinja to actually do something neat. In order to use Jinja, we have to get the data from the data store, so that's step number one, and then pass it through to Jinja. So what we're going to do to get things from the data store, we start with a query. The way queries work is you can use a language called GQL, I think, which is kind of like how SQL works. If you care about like the strings, don't do that. That would be a pain. Use the newest, biggest, best. So the way things work to do queries is you say, what is the entity kind that I want to get? So I want to get a movie quote back. And I say query. That's the thing that will make a query. This is a constructor, right? And so there are parameters that you can pass in the constructor, kind of like, when you create an object, there are usually parameters you can pass into the structure. There's also things you can do with it later, like, you can specify an order, you can add other filters, and things like that. A query, creating the query object is fast, right? Like it just creates a query object. And a query object doesn't actually do the fetch by itself automatically. It waits around for you to use it in one of a couple ways. One way you can use it is you could just say query.fetch, right? And query.fetch, what that would do is that would actually go to your data store and it would get these things and give you a list of them. That operation is fine. I use it all the time. But it does take a little while, so be aware that when you're executing a query, you're pulling data from the data store, and a little while means milliseconds. Oh, it takes so long. You could also specify when you do a fetch, like how many, like let's say you want 30. That's one way you could do it. Another way you could do it is inside Python, you could iterate over it as a loop. So you could say like for movie quote in query, and it would just iterate through. It will take care of creating the iterator before you, behind the scenes, would be just fine. Or another thing you could do is you could do that same thing of a loop, but you could actually do it inside Jinja. Jinja is actually more powerful than people realize because you can really write code inside Jinja. Really, the Jinja thing, it's expanded inside Python, so it can do like almost everything Python can do. So let's quit talking and let's start doing, right? So let's go up into our movie quotes page, and before we render the template, what we want to do is we want to create a query. We want it to return movie quotes, so we're going to say movie quote.query. In fact, instead of query, I could call it like movie quotes query. I like to say the word query just so I know whether it's a query right now or whether it's a list. And then what you can do is you can pass that in to Jinja. No reason to reinvent the wheel with names, right? So we're just going to make our variable movie quotes. We're going to pass it in, and we're just going to give it the same name. We're going to call it movie quotes query. What you're really passing in here is a dictionary. If you're a Java developer, you'd call it a map. So it's a dictionary. So we're passing this in to Jinja. So interestingly enough, the Python part is done. I mean, it's not really done. We're going to see some reasons why this is too simple and fix them later, but we're going to assume it's done for now. And we're going to go into Jinja, and now we're going to use that movie quotes thing that got passed in. So what we want to do below the line, we added an H1 just to say, hey, here are the existing movie quotes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to display them in an unordered list. Unordered list are ULs. And then the items in an unordered list are list items. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a loop. So we're going to put our first Jinja code. So we're going to say for movie quote in movie quotes, or movie quotes query, I believe I called it. We're going to loop through them, and then at the end we're going to say in for. So this is your first practice with the Jinja language. It tries to be very Python-like, right? So for movie quote in movie quotes query, that feels very Python-like. It uses this this syntax. It has to use something crazy to identify that, hey, compiler, or hey, Python, this is Jinja. And for code, it puts on these like percent and then curly brace, and that's just how it works. Inside each li, what we're going to do is we're going to say the quote. The way you say the quote is we're going to say movie quote dot quote. And so that's the actual way you pull the data out. So whenever it's just pulling something out, you just say double quote or double curly brace, double curly brace. And then instead of putting the movie just right below it, I think I put a BR or something like that. I'll have to go look at the notes. Yeah, so I chose to put that one in bold. So I surrounded by B tags. And then I put the movie in a div to put it on another line. I just thought I'd be kind of consistent with the notes. There's a ton of ways to do these things, right? So I'm going to make that bold using a B tag, which again, it's not always best practice. Maybe I should have done that in CSS. Speaking of CSS, this div, I'm going to go ahead and give it a class, which is if you're new to HTML, you're like, what is this? If you've used HTML at all, you know what I'm up to there. And I'm going to say movie quote dot movie. Alrighty. So I think that I've got this guy ready to go, cleaned up my HTML there a little bit, and I'm ready to give this a whirl. So hopefully what it should do is it should display my movies that I have saved in the database. So let's go ahead and refresh this page now. And it gives us a giant error, which is fine. Let me figure out what's going on with my giant error here. It looks like I put a comma in. That's not the correct syntax over in main. I think it's a colon. Yeah, I think I need a colon in there. All right, let's try it again with a colon. That'll probably make me happier. By the way, this printout of the stack trace, the reason this happens is because we have debug set to true. Debug set to true means just show me the stack trace right in the HTML page. And it's very handy just to see it right there. All right, so let's try it again with a colon there. Aha, good stuff is happening. I see my movie and my quote, and then I'll be back and Terminator. We've got some good stuff going on here. Let's add a new quote, and let's see a small bug that's going to happen. So I'm going to start numbering just to keep them simple. I'm just going to say quote number 1, movie number 1, and I'm going to hit submit. And something kind of annoying is going to happen. It doesn't show up. You're like, what the heck? I just put it in. Click refresh. Bingo, there it is. Movie number 1, quote number 1. Did that really just happen? Let's do that again. Quote number 2, movie number 2, submit. Sure enough, it happened again. What the heck? So it's not there, and then I hit refresh, and then it's there. Okay, so we're making good progress. We have 2 problems. One problem is it's not in order, right? So it's supposed to be newest to oldest. And the other problem is it wasn't showing up until I click refresh. The order one is easy to fix. Let's fix that one first because it's easier. To fix the order, we just have to give it an order, right? So the order that we're going to give it is based on last touch date time. I wanted it in reverse order, so I wanted it newest on top, so I said negative, so that makes it the reverse order. So with that change, order negative of the movie quote last touch date time. Now I should have fixed the order, so if I refresh it, so it says movie quote 2 on top, and then 1, and then my quote, and then I'll be back is on the bottom. order fixed. Now we want to fix this problem of not showing up as soon as I click submit. This is not a bug. This is what's called eventual consistency. Eventual consistency means this. When you actually store something to the data store, it doesn't store it right away because it takes a while. It actually just makes a log that says, hey, this needs to be stored at some point, and then it returns control to you like immediately, right? So when you say .put, it just says, all right, I'll make a log. I know I need to do it. Get off my back, right? And then it returns control, and then the next thing that happens is it redirects to the referrer. It does a query. That event hasn't actually happened yet, so it does the query, and it doesn't know about that event, and so it just gives you the data. And so it's not a bug at all. If you want it to behave differently, though, you can fix it. So the current model it's using is eventual consistency, which it's doing to try to be as fast as possible. But what we would actually like better in this case is strong consistency. Strong consistency means, lock things down until the previous things finish. The way you do this in Google App Engine is through giving the entity a parent. So if my key has a parent key, it can actually look to see if it's done. Let's go do it, and then we'll talk about it more. So what we're going to do is a little lame, right? So we're going to create a generic key to serve as the parent. You probably can't read that text. Let me go fix that real quick. It's under Window, Preferences, Editor for PyDev. It's under Comments. Somebody at Rose used hot pink once, and I kind of liked it. So we'll say, make our comments hot pink. Now you can read that better. So we need a parent key. I know this is a little bit gibberish at first, but it's not too bad. So what we need to do is we need to create a key. A key always needs to be an entity type, and then it needs to have an ID, which in this case we'll use a string. So I'll just call it movie quote root. So it's just some unique key. NDB it doesn't know about, so I'm going to do a Control-Shift-O. Yep, that's the NDB I'm talking about. And what I need to do is this parent key, when I create a movie quote, I'm going to set its parent to be equal to the parent key. And then whenever I do a query, the constructor, I'm going to say, hey, I've got an ancestor of parent key. Now, since I'm doing a query that has an ancestor, it's actually called an ancestor query, it will look for event logs that need to be processed. If it sees them, it'll wait until they finish, and then it'll do its job. So you have to put a parent on here, and you have to query by that same parent to get strong consistency. Now, the one thing that will happen, just to mention it, all the quotes I've made so far, they won't have this parent. So when I say, hey, look for only the ones that have this parent, they won't exist, right? So if I save this and I go to my page and I do a refresh, it's going to wipe all these guys out. So I say refresh. And it wiped them out because I'm only looking for people with that parent key, of which there are none. But let's now add a new one, right? So quote with strong consistency. And what the heck, I'll just say my movie. So now when I hit submit, it should actually show it right there because now it's using strong consistency. Also, if you wanted to, you could go in and you could clean up your data store, right? So all these others, they don't even have that parent. And so I'm just going to delete them just so that they're not even around. So you can blow those away. And so now we've got display of our quotes working the way that we want. We'll say, I love strong consistency. Me too. The downsides of strong consistency is that it locks down the whole world until things finish. It works fine for this app, but I mean, if you had 1 million users and somebody tried to refresh the page, this would explode, right? There are smart ways to do it where you only give parents to like you have a bunch of parents. But for this example, it's simple and it worked great. So the things we added, just to kind of review, we learned about queries. We learned about passing them into Jinja. We got our first introduction to the Jinja programming language, very Python based, and we showed some movie quotes. All right, so that's it for now. We'll see you next time.